Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Renu Tyagi from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today we will study the module The Distinctive Interdisciplinary Nature of Ecological Anthropology. The learning outcome of the module are: after completing this module, the learner will be able to understand about the basic concept of ecological anthropology and interdisciplinary nature of ecological anthropology. The learner will be able to understand the distinctive interdisciplinary nature of ecological anthropology. First of all, I will briefly speak on the introduction of the module. Understanding our environment and culture has long been the center of scientific enterprise and is becoming increasingly important as growth in human populations and economic activities intensifies the stresses the human place on the environment. The consequences of those stresses are increasingly evident, such as habitat degradation, climate change, hole in the ozone layer, climatic stress, etc. The science of anthropology has traditionally been a holistic discipline. Anthropologists have advocated a broad comparative study of human behavior in the search for general laws and principles, and little about men has been left out. It is perhaps not surprising then to find that anthropological explanation has also been far away in its attempt to find out the chaos of human diversity. At one time or the other, anthropologists have explained human behavior with reference to current topics in biology, ecology, history, evolution, diffusion, and independent invention. For example, to explore the ways in which environment is used in anthropological explanations, an area of endeavor currently referred to as ecological anthropology. The roots of ecological anthropology are to be found in several different traditions of environmental explanation, some of which are tightly woven into Western thoughts. Now we will discuss the concept of ecological anthropology. Ecological anthropology studies the relation between human being and their environment. Its foundation were laid by Julian Stewart in the mid-20th century. Stewart emphasized the dynamic two-way nature of the culture-environment relationship and the importance of the concept of adaptation in understanding it. Stewart distinguished cultural from the biological ecology on the grounds that the former was about the adaptation of culture as a system existing outside of individual human organism. By contrast, in the so-called new ecology of 1960s, culture was seen as the means of environmental adaptation of human population. Theories developed in animal ecology were considered applicable to human as well. Drawing on one such theory of group selection, ecological anthropologists focused on how aspects of cultural behavior maintain balance or homeostasis in the relations between a local group and its environmental resources, and so promote its long-term survival. In the 1970s and 1980s, ecological anthropology was overtaken by sociobiology, emphasizing the gene rather than the group as the unit of selection. Sociobiologists argued that adaptive role of cultural behavior is to contribute to the representation of individual genes in future generations. One recent offshoot of sociobiology, evolutionary behavioral ecology, is dedicated to showing how adaptive strategies established through natural selection are played out under variable environmental conditions. For example, studies of human foraging have explained the relationship between food procurement patterns and energy returns. During the 1990s, however, a quite different trend was emerged in ecological anthropology. This approach looks at the totality of relations existing between persons and their environment and privileges neither genetics nor culture in explanation of human action and perception. Ecological anthropology is a subfield of anthropology and is defined as the study of cultural adaptation to environments. This subfield is also defined as the study of relationships between a population of humans and their biophysical environment. The focus of its research concerns how cultural beliefs and practices helped human population adapt to their environment and how people used elements of their culture to maintain their ecosystems. Ecological anthropology developed from the approach of cultural ecology and it provided a conceptual framework more suitable for scientific inquiry than the cultural ecology approach. Research pursued under this approach aims to study a wide range of human responses to environmental problems. Now, I will give a picture of basic concept in ecological anthropology. Now, what are the basic concepts of ecological anthropology? Ecological anthropology focuses upon the complex relationship between people and their environment. Human population have ongoing contact with and impact upon the land, climate, plant and the animal species in their vicinities, and these elements of their environment have reciprocal impact on humans, as conveyed by Salzman and Atwood in 1996. Ecological anthropology investigates the ways that a population shapes its environment and the subsequent manners in which these relations form the population's social, economic and political life. In a general sense, ecological anthropology attempts to provide a materialist explanation of human society and culture as a product of adaptation to given environmental conditions. Charles Darwin, in his book The Origin of Species in 1859, presented a synthetic theory of evolution based on idea of descent with modifications. In each generation, more individuals are produced than can survive because of limited resources and competition between individuals arises. Individuals with favorable characteristics or variation survive to reproduce. It is the environmental context that determines whether or not a trait is beneficial. Malthus had an obvious influence on Darwin's formulations. Malthus pioneered demographic studies arguing that human populations naturally tend to outstrip their food supply. This circumstance leads to disease and hunger, which eventually put a limit on the growth of population. The word ecology is derived from the Greek word oikos, meaning habitation. Haeckel coined our modern understanding of ecology in 1870s, defining it as the study of economy of the household of animal organisms. This includes the relationship of animals with the inorganic and organic environment, above all the beneficial and inimical relation. Darwin referred to as the conditions for the struggle of existence. Therefore, an ecosystem consists of organisms acting in a bounded environment. As a reaction to Darwin's theory, some anthropologists eventually turned to environmental determinism as a mechanism for explanation. The earliest attempt at environmental determinism mapped cultural feature of human populations according to environmental information. For example, correlations were drawn between natural features and human technologies. The detailed ethnographic accounts of Boas, Malinowski and others led to the realization that environmental determinism could not sufficiently account for observed realities, and a weaker form of determinism began to emerge. At this time, Julian Stewart coined the term cultural ecology. He looked for the adaptive responses to similar environments that gave rise to cross-cultural similarities. Stewart's theory centered around a cultural core, which he defined as the constellation of features which are most closely related to subsistence activities and economic arrangements. By the 1960s and 70s, cultural ecology and environmental determinism lost favor within anthropology. Ecological anthropologists formed new school of thought, including the ecosystem model, ethnoecology and historical ecology. Researchers hoped that ecological anthropology and the study of adaptation would provide explanation of customs and institutions. Ecological anthropologists believed that populations are not engaged with the total environment around them, but rather with a habitat consisting of certain selected aspects and local ecosystems. Furthermore, each population has its own adaptations institutionalized in the culture of the group, especially in their technologies. A field such as ecological anthropology is particularly relevant to contemporary concerns with the state of the general environment. Anthropological knowledge has the potential to inform and instruct humans about how to construct sustainable ways of life. Anthropology, especially when it has an environmental focus, also demonstrate the importance of preserving cultural diversity. Biological diversity is necessary for the adaptation and survival of all species. Cultural diversity may serve a similar role for the human species because it is clearly one of our most important mechanisms of adaptation. Now, I will talk about the interdisciplinary nature of ecological anthropology. Ecological anthropology is a subfield of anthropology and is defined as the study of cultural adaptation to environment. The subfield is also defined as the study of relationships between a population of humans and their biophysical environment. The focus of its research concerns how cultural beliefs and practices helped human population adapt to their environment and how people used elements of their culture to maintain their ecosystems. Ecological anthropology developed from the approach of cultural ecology, and it provided a conceptual framework more suitable for scientific inquiry than the cultural ecology approach. Research pursued under this approach aims to study wide range of human responses to environmental problems. Since the ecological anthropology is complex and actually made up of many different environments, including natural, constructed and cultural environments, ecological anthropology studies is the interdisciplinary examination of how biology, zoology, politics, policy, studies, law, geology, religion, engineering, chemistry and economic combine to inform the consideration of humanity's effect on the natural world. This subject educates the student to appreciate the complexity of ecological issues and citizens and experts in many fields. By studying the ecological anthropology, students may develop a breadth of the interdisciplinary and methodological knowledge the ecological fields that enables them to facilitate the definition and solution of ecological problems. Ecological factors greatly influence every organism and their activities. The major areas in which the role of environmental scientists are of vital importance are natural resources, ecosystems, biodiversity and its conservation, environmental pollution, social issues and environmental, human population and environment. It is essentially a multidisciplinary approach and its components include biology, geology, chemistry, physics, engineering, sociology, health sciences, anthropology, economics, statistics and philosophy. It is essentially a multidisciplinary approach. An understanding of the working of the environment requires the knowledge from wide-ranging fields. Although students of ecological anthropology all agree that the basic distinguishing characteristic of their discipline consists of the study of relations between men and the environment, they differ concerning the inclusiveness of this field and the kinds of investigation that should be emphasized within it. The 7 contrasting points of the view that are summarized herein respectively picture ecological anthropology as an inclusive synthesis of many traditional sciences, as identical with human geography as the specialized application to men of certain general principles of biology, as a study of subsocial human relation, as the study of distinctive social cultural sub-areas of the city, as the study of spatial distribution of human phenomena, and as a coterminous with studies of communities and regions. Now, let us see ecological anthropology as an inclusive synthesis. J.W. Buse, a botanist, presents the most inclusive conception of human ecology or ecological anthropology found in ecological literature. He describes this field as an inclusive synthesis that unifies all the human sciences and enable each one to find its proper place in the generalized society of man. Sometimes it concentrates on the environment itself, sometimes on man himself, sometimes on the interaction between the two. But finally, it always endeavors to view the environment, function, organism triad as one definitely integrated whole. This broad point of view makes ecological anthropology include in their entirely all those sciences that deals with number 1, the human organism per se, number 2, the environment per se, and number 3, the relations between the two. In particular, Buse conceives ecological anthropology as including such traditional studies as anatomy and physiology, which treats the structure and functioning of the individual human organism, that is eugenics, embryology and evolution, which describe man's biological heritage and development, geology and geography, which analyzes the material environment and man's direct relation to it, psychological, which studies man as a thinking animal who adjusts to his surroundings, anthropology, which describes man's culture and sociology, which studies human interrelations. In addition, ecological anthropology has the function of synthesizing all knowledge about men and environment and their relations into an integrated whole. Buse assumes as a basic for his point of view that men and environment are inseparable, that life apart from environment does not exist and conceived, that environment apart from life is meaningless, and that life consists essentially of a process of interchange between the life substance or protoplasm and the environment. Environment, function and organism constitute together the fundamental biological triad. This triad must be studied as one complete whole, and this study is essentially what we mean by ecology. Buse distinguishes between autoecology and synecology as subdivisions of human ecology. Autoecology studies the relation between individual organisms and environment, and synecology is the relation between groups and the environment. Other human ecologists agree with views that men and environment are inseparable, so that neither can be understood except in relation to the other. That the synthesis of all knowledge concerning men is highly important. They would restrict their field, however, to the relationship aspect of the triad and would not include studies of either the organism or the environment per se. Ecological anthropology viewed as identical with human geography. Human geographers who identified their field as the study of mutual relationship between men and the environment makes it, by definition, identical with human ecology or ecological anthropology as defined in their restricted sense mentioned above. But geographers typically do not study the entire field of reciprocal relation between men and environment. Textbook on various aspects of human geography, regional, economic, political and numerous geographic monographs on specific areas either omit or pay scant attention to the ecological processes that many anthropologists or sociologists regard as fundamental in ecological study. Geographers place much greater emphasis on direct relation between men and the environment than on the integrated functional spatial pattern of relation among men, which anthropological ecologists emphasize. Ecological anthropology as an application of biological principle. Biologists who admit the existence of a field of ecological anthropology usually think of it as consisting of the direct application to men of certain biological principles, especially the principle of plant and animal ecology. They believe that just as the study of simple form of living organism help in understanding the complex human body, so the relatively simple principles exhibited in plant and animal communities give insight into the complex social life of men. They have developed several general ecological concepts, that is competition, cooperation, succession, invasion, gradient, web of life, food chain, niche, natural area, that they would apply directly to the study of human communities. They look upon ecological anthropology as the extension to men of general ecological concepts and principles. This point of view neglects completely the factor of culture, which makes ecological anthropology differ in certain fundamental ways from plant and animal ecology, and it fails to provide a theoretical framework for the analysis of complex integrated area that are themselves composed of diverse specialized sub-areas. Now let us see ecological anthropology as a study of sub-social relation among men. Within the field of anthropology, one important point of view pictures ecological anthropology as the study of those sub-social aspects of aerial organization that arise and change through competition. This point of view omits all studies of the strictly social aspects of human interrelations. It emphasizes the points that the men and institution of an area become integrated into a sub-social communal organism as the result of impersonal competitive processes. Through these processes, each individual units find a functional niche and a spatial position that enables it to play a part within the functionally and spatially organized areas. This point of view is the most logical basis for differentiating the anthropological part of ecological anthropology as a distinctive branch of anthropological theory. Considerable confusion exists and numerous controversies occur in anthropology about this point of view. For example, one author declares that both a symbiotic society based on the competition and a cultural society based on symbols, communication do exist, that these aspects of human interrelations can and should be differentiated, and that many elusive aspects of cultural social life can best be approached through the study of this symbiotic substructure. Whereas other authors seriously question the value of distinguishing sharply between the symbiotic and social aspects of men's relation with other men. Again, one investigator makes use of the concept of natural area, whereas another denies its value. One picture ecological interaction as non-cultural, whereas another regards culture as inextricably involved in these processes among men. Almost every proposal made in connection with this point of view, which pictures ecological anthropology as the study of sub-social relations among men, has been both sharply challenged and vigorously supported. Ecological anthropology as the study of social cultural areas says that many studies of rural and urban communities and neighborhood were being made by anthropologists at the time ecological anthropology became recognized as a division of anthropological field. Some of these studies, especially those made in Western world, were tied together in an ecological frame of reference by the Burgess hypothesis of concentric zones. Although individually they placed major emphasis on institutions, personality type and social processes. Monographs on Hobohemia, the Gold Coast, Little Sicily, the Black Belt and other distinctive sub-areas were primarily studies of the social cultural complex rather than of the sub-social spatial structures. These studies became so widely identified with the ecological approach, however, that some anthropologists have tended to look upon ecological anthropology as the study of rural-urban social cultural areas. This social cultural conception of ecological anthropology seems inadequate as a means of defining the field, notwithstanding the excellent monographic studies of areas that have been identified with it. Now let us have a look of ecological anthropology as the study of spatial distributions. To some anthropologists, ecological anthropology includes all studies of spatial distribution of human phenomena. These persons would include as ecological all spatial studies of the sub-social and social organization of areas, but in addition would admit purely descriptive displays of spatially distributed areas. Therefore, they would regard as ecological all investigation that make use of mapping techniques to show the spatial spread of populations, institution or problems within an area. These persons regard spatial distribution as the distinguishing feature of ecological study. This conception of ecological anthropology appears to be both inadequate and logically indefensible, both because ecology studies something more than mere spatial distribution and because some spatial distribution, such as an army unit on parade, do not result from ecological processes. Ecological anthropology can be viewed as coterminous with studies of communities and regions. During recent years, an increasing number of anthropologists have come to identify ecological anthropology with studies of communities and regions. Within a community or a region, the population, the environment and the culture are bound together in an intricate complex so that no part can be understood except in relation to the whole. These distinctive areas, complex presumably afford into useful means of dividing the complex web of human relations into convenient units for study. Because a spatial area is necessary, an environmental concept. This point of view assumes that any such areal study necessarily involves men's adjustment to environment and therefore is ecological. This point of view has been variously presented or illustrated by different authors. For example, as an inseparable whole has been emphasized by Mukherjee, Odom and Moore have insisted more on regional approach as basic to the understanding and control of human affair. And rural anthropologists and sociologists, beginning with Galpin, have made comprehensive studies of rural communities in conformity with this point of view. Some anthropological investigators have not attempted to make comprehensive studies of the total areal complex, but have restricted their attention to one or more aspect of it. All of these authors seems to agree, however, that a study is ecological to the extent that it examines any aspect of the spatial, functional, cultural complex of a community or a region. This emphasis on communities and region as the distinguishing feature of ecological anthropology afford a practical basis for systematizing the wide variety of contemporary material now characteristic of the field. Now, let us summarize this module. Through this module, we could understood our environment and culture, which has long been central to the scientific enterprise and is becoming increasingly important as growth in human population and economic activities intensifies the stress the human placed on the environment. The science of anthropology has traditionally been a holistic discipline. At one time or other, anthropologists have explained human behavior with reference to current topic in biology, ecology, history, evolution, diffusion, and independent invention. For example, to explore the ways in which environment is used in anthropological explanation, an area of endeavor currently referred as ecological anthropology. Ecological anthropology is a subfield of anthropology. Ecological anthropology studies the relation between the human being and their environment. Stewart distinguished cultural from biological ecology on the grounds that the former was about the adaptation of culture as a system existing outside of individual human organisms. Theories developed in animal ecology were considered applicable to humans as well. Ecological anthropology developed from the approach of cultural ecology. Human population have ongoing contact with and impact upon the land, climate, plant and animal species in their vicinities, and these elements of their environment have reciprocal impact on humans. In the book The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, he presented a synthetic theory of evolution based on the idea of descent with modification. The word ecology is derived from the Greek word oikos, meaning habitation. Haeckel coined the modern understanding of ecology. Julian Stewart coined the term cultural ecology. A field such as ecological anthropology is particularly relevant to contemporary concerns with the state of the general environment. Ecological anthropology is a complex and actually made up of many different environments, including the natural, constructed and cultural environment. Ecological anthropology studies is the interdisciplinary examination of how biology, geology, politics, policy studies, law, geology, religion, engineering, chemistry and economics combine to inform the consideration of humanity's effect on the natural world. Thank you.